All right. So slightly behind schedule. I regret the delay. Our next session is bridging the gap between finance and procurement. Now, if you all look in time, you'd notice that the role of finance and procurement has increased, uh, leading to a necessary collaboration between these two departments. Collaboration between finance and procurement leads to not only better savings but also you're in a position to make more informed decisions. You can improve demand planning and develop a better understanding of the vendor landscape. With this also comes better decision making and less timely processes. Our next speaker, Gaurav. Rimpi, could you please introduce him and take it from there?
Yeah, thanks, Shantanu. So, this session is powered by our gold partner, ProCall. ProCall is India's fastest growing procurement technology company. It is a digital procurement platform that helps companies to digitize their buying processes. About our speaker, Gaurav Baheti. Gaurav is an engineer turned designer and has worked at companies like Zomato and Google. But being passionate and full of potential, he decided to start his own company, wanting to do what he really loves. So, Gaurav is the founder and CEO with ProCall. Over to you, Gaurav. Thanks.
Thank you, Rimpi. Thank you, Shantanu, and the entire Programming Asia team for setting this up. Delighted to be partnering with you guys on this session. My topic today stands at bridging the gap between finance and procurement. And this one goes close to my heart because when I started this company, we were building digital infrastructure projects for many companies. And uh, we were just trying to bridge gaps between multiple departments, and the gap between finance and procurement was the most apparent one that we always wanted to solve for. Uh, before I begin what this all is about, let me just first address the elephant in the room, which is what gap are we talking about, right? What is this gap that finance and procurement guys sees? And let me start off with a story. It's a simple example of Saurabh and Aditya. Saurabh is the finance leader, and Aditya is the procurement leader at a Fortune 500 company. And both of them have remarkably climbed up the professional ladder to be what they have. Uh, but it's like any other day, month end meeting to discuss company's growth strategies and business priorities. Aditya, who's the procurement leader, just presented a case claiming that 95 crore worth of savings for the current year, but is challenged with several questions. As you can see, the boardroom, there's finance on one side and procurement teams on the other side. Procurement does all the sourcing work and reports approved savings, uh, but are just not visible in the P&L. And Saurabh began throwing questions about savings approval process and whether these savings have been realized, or really how these savings really came through. On top of that, procurement was blamed for lack of transparency, which was then resulted in ability of finance to confirm contract compliance, and hence there's no way to justify what savings came in, where did they go. So typically there was just loss of mutual trust between both the teams, right? Because hey, procurement and Aditya's team worked really hard to get companies 95 crore worth of savings, and at one side there's no visibility in P&L, then what is really going on. Uh, But before I jump into more details here, let me talk about a little bit of history, which is procurement was not even considered a different function till as recently as 70 years, Um, in the US, there have been ministries of procurement. In India, Ministry of Finance, as per my understanding, manages the entire procurement function. But now procurement and finance, after in these 70 years, are like two rail tracks. There's obviously a gap between them. But it's not just me. Let's look at some data. Asked from the top 1,000 companies in the world and different departments, there was a crafted demographic survey created by one of the companies, and it asks these professionals in finance and procurement, how would you best describe the working relationship between procurement and finance? Uh, and the results were surprising because not we didn't expect this sort of obvious gap between these two teams. The key takeaway was that just 1 in 3 finance and procurement leaders view the finance procurement working relationship as collaborative, and that is a uh, that's quite less, because if the teams don't collaborate, then how are they going to achieve the common vision of the company? Uh, Not just this. Let's look at another statistic. Are the savings in procurement? Are the savings procurement is generating clear and well understood by finance? Uh, and looking at the statistics, 31% finance leader claim yes they are being tracked and are absolute savings. But the key takeaway from this statistic for me was that more than half of organizations are not tracking absolute savings. How should they even track absolute savings, right? So let's come to the reasons why, what led to this misalignment between savings claimed and savings realized between these companies. There are three key reasons for this, right? First is there's no common language and terminology today when discussing results, which is P&L, and savings on the other side. The second is measuring contracted rather than realized savings. And the third is focus only on proactive savings projects and not taking external factors into consideration. And these are, and I'll come to what I mean by each of these, but on a broad level, the things are very different for finance and procurement professionals, how they operate, how they use their terminologies, and so on and so forth. Uh, let's talk about bridging the gap very simply. But I'd like to first address again here that why to bridge the gap even. The most important reason to be bridging the gap is that the markets have changed entirely. The world has moved from asset heavy businesses to asset light businesses. Today, the world's largest company, Apple, has only 10 to 20% of in-house spend. Rest is contracted spend. So, from what in the past was 60 to 80% in-house spend, today 10 to 20% value-added owning spend is incurred by these companies. So companies are moving toward asset-light models entirely. Procurement, hence, is becoming a core function of the business because entire non-payroll business spend include 40 to 70% of revenue today. And procurement enables at least 5 to 12% savings on average. So how do you go from uh, asset heavy to asset light and then delivers exceptional results on top of this? Uh, Let me just talk about key characteristics of procurement functions that drive financial results. And there are few of them. These are just the key characteristics. If you want to see what the best would look like, and next I would come to how you can achieve that. But if you have to visualize that, what what is the success looking like? The success looks like when procurement and financial use spend data within their budgeting and planning functions. That's one of the characteristics. The second is they use systems in place to conduct spend analysis. Um, Third, they have centralized finance and procurement teams which have real-time access to the data. Fourth is they track and communicate savings generated by procurement teams. So both are on the same page. And the fifth is they include cash flow and working capital as a key element of procurement savings goals. And this is very important because if procurement doesn't track it, finance tracks it. They're again on the different page. But if you look at the key characteristics, it's bringing everyone on the same page. Uh, by bringing people on the same page together, realizes better benefits and alignment between both the teams. Let me give you a simple example of how, in one scenario, this can be achieved. From the previous example of what procurement calls savings and what finance calls results. Here are here is a way to establish gold standard of savings benchmarks. Gold standard procurement teams deliver exceptional profits. How do they do it? There are 4 steps of how you can very simply understand of how to measure the right savings and basically bring both the teams on the same page. First is establishing a common ground. The second is defining procurement contribution in different segments. Third, isolation of their drivers of cost. And finally, measure the right savings. And now let me come to each of these single and go deeper in what I mean by all of these steps. If you have to define exactly what savings should mean or how they should be calculated, first you have to establish a common ground, right? What types of purchases is company making? And we try to define this just by putting four boxes. There are two types of categories and there are two types of spends, nature of the spend. Nature of the spend is we define if the purchases are not being repeated, they are one-off spends, very simply put. And if they are being repeated on a periodic basis, they are recurring spends. If they are one-off spend, you don't have a baseline for calculating savings, which is you can't do it year on year or month on month. For recurring, on the other hand, you can possibly do that. But I'll come to that later. And the second part of this is, which is on the y-axis, you can divide OPEX and CAPEX spend very simply. Operating expenses are accounted directly within company's EBITDA, whereas capital expenditures are excluded from EBITDA but visible through depreciation. So it's important to note that there are four combinations very simply to come to how you should calculate savings for such categories. Second step was defining procurement contributions. How do you define that? How is procurement team contributing to each of these sort of spend? There are three ways to do this. The first is cost avoidance, one-time negotiated savings. So for all your one-time purchases, which are not recurring in nature, you have to have a simple framework in place that can show you negotiated savings. This will ensure that procurement continues to support one of large purchases for your company, and that require that the negotiation expertise and gets rewarded accordingly. This is what we call cost avoidance. This is generally measured in two ways, but we can look at calculations later on. There's a second type of procurement contribution for recurring capex spends, which cannot be measured directly from the bottom line because sometimes they are also looked at depreciations. And another example could be working capital improvement by just negotiating better payment terms. This will result in cash only savings for these companies. The third type is EBITDA savings. This is for recurring OPEX purchases, and this is what most companies are looking for, which can be measured year on year basis. But all of these types of spend essentially result in large savings for different types of companies. The third step was isolation of its value drivers. For each of these categories, let's isolate how does the cost move? What are the levers to move that cost? So the first step of doing that is define the cost drivers for each category within these types of spend. So just to give you an example of commodity here, commodity cost drivers can be currency, volumes, and markets. And so you break down each of your driver and you put a formula for calculating those drivers. Then calculate each driver separately. And volumes, your currency and markets have to be a function, have to be variable to calculate these savings. Then define savings as financial contribution from one period to another. A very simple example here is of procurement savings, that procurement savings is equal to spend of this year, spend of previous year, minus your all the value driver cost, which is volume impact, currency impact, market impact. And this is a very basic structure to calculate savings. But the idea here is to just isolate what is driving that cost. And by doing that, you are leading us to the final step of measuring the right savings. Once you have the framework of how you want to calculate savings, let's define the right savings formula and communicate that to the procurement team, which is, hey, these are your categories. A procurement team typically looks at spend from a category point of view, which is material spend, logistics spend, travel, IT, and so on. So let's communicate what type of category will result in what type of savings calculation. So It can be historic savings, it can be payment term savings, specification savings, index savings for your commodity prices, or negotiated savings to measure your cost avoidance. And these are a few of the ways that you can define and communicate to your procurement teams how you're actually measuring their impact on the bottom line. And then finally, you establish the right benchmarks. You can get the past data to establish the current and future performance, and set the profitability goals for next year or next quarter, and so on. And this overall will result in you being aligning both the teams better, just on how you want to measure savings and how much savings you want to deliver next quarter. So this is one way of doing it. But with thousands of categories and crores of spend, how can you win? Imagine now doing this exercise over and over again for millions of line items, thousands of categories across different geographies. This is not something that you can do one time. It has to be tracked, it has to be measured, and finally delivered. Because hey, the success is what drives outcome. Outcome is what drives success, should I say. So how can you win? Let me talk about the new procurement bridges. In the world today, the world is moving fast, and there are many different ways how both the teams are better aligned. Technology is already changing the landscape of procurement, transforming the function from a gatekeeper to a strategic enabler. This, what I broadly mean by this is, there are many different technologies out there available today to just do this, bridge this gap, and we call these the new bridges. um, how should this be possible, right? There are many different technologies available right there, and digital procurement is the enabler to sort of bring both the teams and align the company towards a common mission. um, there are, across source to contract processes, your procure to pay processes, and supplier relationship management, there are many things that you can do. But uh, and a lot of it is existent today, there are many things that technology is enabling you to do today, not in the future. Just to give you example, in source to contract space, all of this spend can be categorized and analyzed in real time, leveraging machine learning. You can predict demand. You can do demand forecasting with AI. You can know landed cost of any commodity for alternate countries of origin. You can predict future sources of supply. You can act timely on all negotiated agreements through smart contracts. This is today, this is not the future. Uh, Another bridge. So this was on the sourcing side bridge. There's another transactional procurement which needs more bridges, which is automatically sends material demand and requisition, replenishment, deliveries from suppliers. Eliminate repetitive processing through RPAs, which a lot of companies have already started doing. Trigger payments utilizing real-time signals and material delivery. Execute automated secure payments. Very simple. Exchange goods through validated and trusted decentralized ledger leveraging blockchain. Again, this is possible today. This is not the future. So these bridges are already existent today, and over 5 trillion worth of procurements are already managed digitally. Um, Asia Pacific and India have just begun their digital procurement journey. The bottom line is the digital procurement is here, uh, is not the future. It is today and it is here. Everyone is trying to bridge this gap, and there is this simple bridge that is already available out there. The only thing is, $1 million question is, where should you start? And I say $1 million question because literally millions are at stake if you don't align these teams faster today. Because alignment is what will drive outcomes and hence success. So let's align both the teams faster, right? It's a very simple way. Take an agile approach to digitizing your procurement function. um, what does an agile approach mean? I mean, it's a very common management word used in all sessions, all forums. An agile approach basically means a flexible way for you to find out what works best for you. While everything is out there available today, you just have to say it. you have to figure out what works best for your company and the success of your organization. Three simple steps, and like I tell my entire team, if you want to make any change happen, you first have to start small, second you have to act fast, and third you have to think big. uh, and you start with imagining what is possible in your organization. Where do you see where do you see the end state? That's imagination part, and then you start with one piece of it, which can be enable spend and contract management. Very simple pieces that you can pick up. You deliver some results and you move on. That's capability sprint one. And hey, you're starting to deliver results and the company sees benefit out of it, and then you start running towards more progress, which means you can develop new sourcing strategies. You can build efficient and spend data, which can leverage robotic capabilities to automate all your processes between procurement and finance. And hence you can run multiple capability sprints over multiple months and quarters. And finally you're just seeing progress, and finally you're seeing savings, and finally the impact of it in bottom line. And that's the objective, right? And you can now start thinking big. Hey, you've achieved 5% savings result this quarter, or in the next 8 to 10 months. Do you see this going to 10 to 12% in the next year? And how can that be possible? With uh, with procurement technologies, that is actually possible, and many companies are doing it today. And hence we see more and more companies leveraging these technologies. So look at your small wins and start optimizing for them, which is you can, from sourcing, digitizing sourcing, to enabling contract management, to introducing new sourcing strategies and building efficiencies. uh, there's a lot of things that you can do, but let me focus on, 5 key areas that you can start working on today, to deliver results. The first is you can work on strengthening your supply chain resilience. You can build transparency in your supply chain beyond tier one suppliers. Everyone knows about tier one suppliers, but it's the local and regional vendors that don't have visibility anyone on. So get that right. Multi-sourcing of critical input is very important. Run simulation and develop business continuity plan for a range of scenarios. What this means is you essentially are figuring out what all types of suppliers there can be, what all types of scenarios there can be in your supply areas, and you make trying to make your supply chain more resilience on top of that. And there are other ways. Other thing I would focus on is zero-based category strategy and value creation. You're rethinking what category strategies you want to execute. You're going to reassess prices, demand specifications, lever by lever, and this is going to take discussions with your procurement teams or procurement providers. Third, you're going to develop better supply partnerships, and you can define co-innovation models. You can dig into partnership models with your suppliers, get real-time visibility in their inventory, know how much you should be buying, what is the back-end supply chain looking like, and so on. And you can have better contractual arrangements with them to incentivize their performance. This is another one that can instantly push your performance on procurement better. Third is digital analytics and just digital adoption. I mean, procurement processes are manual, and just digitizing these procurement processes will give you so much visibility in your spend. Who are the vendors quoting, at what price, at what time, who have won more who have won more awards by say 10 rupees only, who is winning on different areas. Can you aggregate your spend to award negotiate even further with single supplier? Do you want to separate out your core suppliers and secondary suppliers, and award different types of contracts to them? The answer for this only will come out if you have access to data on your procurement. And so once you build the visibility in your procurement process, a lot of opportunities open up. And we have seen these opportunities. Over 20% of transactions have less than two bids for every transaction in a company. So there's 20% transactional opportunity on the table if you digitize your procurement processes. So this is one of the most important areas that we focus on. Then transforming to a future ready operating model. This is about defining what the future could look like. Just writing it down on paper, nobody wants day one solution, but everyone wants to invest in the future of the company. And this is where it comes in. You have to adopt agile methods, and build capabilities to work in the new ways, because this is not the future, this is happening now. Uh, but like I tell my employees, like I tell my investors, like I tell all my customers, the key driver for change in every organizations are just three, which is people, process, and technology. uh, People are the guiding principle of how business is being done today. uh, India is growing fast and people are upgrading themselves. There's new generation of business class and startups coming up all together, moving fast on delivering this change. New processes are being formed, uh, which means that processes can be agile too. They don't have to be very strict to not move from one place to another. And third is technology enablement, which is just figuring out what the right technology is to suit your requirement. Uh, People, process, and technology defines the levers for India's new age growth, to be honest. And so this is where we like to come in and introduce ourselves as ProCall. We are building the next generation procurement solution. Just a little bit about us. We are one of the leader in FMCG retail and manufacturing space. We've been awarded by Fortune 500 companies on G2. We won several awards last year on Disruptive Procurement Solution of the Year. We've done transactions over 5,000 crores so far, and we're targeting to do between 15,000 to 20,000 crore of sourcing this year. We are present in 3 locations with a team of about 50 people, based in Gurgaon, Mumbai, and Bangalore. Uh, and we've been featured on Gartner. We are Forbes Asia's under 30, uh, and we have been published by many of the prominent service providers. We are also tier one private equity backed by venture capitalists like Sequoia Surge, Bloom Ventures, BNext, and Zero the Rain Matter. And we are one of the leading service providers for procurement solutions. This is all that I have to say. But Procall is one of the leading players in helping companies bridge the gap between procurement and financing, and deliver results that what companies care about. Otherwise, there is no point of putting any solution if there are no outcomes from that solution. So all I'd like to say is give digital procurement a shout, and you will be able to see better results on your profitability in the future. With that, I would just say thank you for taking the time and listening to me all about bridging the gap between procurement and finance. This alignment will change the future, and the future is now. Thank you again.
Thank you, Gaurav, for the session. So before we proceed to Q&A, I would like to request delegates to submit their responses to the poll sections from the right-hand side of your screen. So Gaurav, I have few questions. So the challenges in services sourcing is much difficult than product procurement. How do we ensure competitiveness on the services procurement and contain costs, especially when these procurements are having inherent technological fast obsolescence?
That is a fair question, Chandra. Right? Thank you for asking me that. Challenges in services sourcing is very critical, because most of the time companies are the biggest challenge in services sourcing is definition of what is exactly required. Many people are finding challenges in aligning the teams exactly what do we require, and just decide basis on the outcome of what we require. And I can give you several hundreds of examples that we have seen in the past few months where companies were trying to source X, but the specification was not aligned with the company. So they went with a single source vendor that management suggested. Um But today, the competitiveness is increasing because discoverability of more and more service providers is increasing online. Um, I think the biggest way to solve this is to benchmark what your service requirements are with the right specifications of what you want, and then run a quick analysis of what are the cost drivers for it. Once you have that in place, I think it's very easy to jump to how do you want to measure competitiveness and savings in your services category. At ProCall, we have delivered savings between 10 to 15% of savings as a category. So we really understand what different sort of categories exist and why it is important to identify the savings levers in those categories. Um, I hope this answers your question.
We have one more question. How do you see AI playing a part in strategic sourcing?
Oh, that's a good one, Sachin.
This is from Sachin Jadhav.
Sure. Thanks, Sachin, for this. AI, I don't see AI playing. AI is already playing a part in strategic sourcing. Even with ProCall has built about 5 to 7 different AI models already deployed within our customers to help with different types of value adds. I will give you very simple examples here. Is your vendor search can go from 7 to 15 days in many cases. This can be shortened to 24 to 48 hours using AI. Because you have all the data on the internet of different types of geographies, suppliers, products, services, categories. This can be put together in a simple digital model and help you discover suppliers faster. Second one is helping you identify what you exactly need. In strategic sourcing, like I said, in services category, it's very hard to define exactly what you're looking for. So there are service providers out there who basically accumulate your English into your requirement and is able to gather what you're looking for. So simplifying your requirement is another area where AI and strategic sourcing plays part. The third one, and we use this at Procall, is called price intelligence. Uh, Price intelligence is basically a model that can predict what future quotes could look like for these XYZ categories. Because Procall has processed quotations of about 10 lakh quotations of different categories, we are able to identify what prices are being varied for which type of category and basically predict what your next sourcing price could be. And so that is the third one of the biggest value adds for AI in strategic sourcing.
Thank you, Gaurav. So this session is brought to you by a gold partner, ProCall. So now we will end the session, and you can join us for the next session soon in a short while. So once the session ends, you may click on schedule and join us for the next session. Thank you so much, Gaurav.
Sounds good. Thanks, Vidhi.
Thank you.